Good morning. Welcome to our kitchen. This is show number 310, I believe, and I have a special guest and a little different theme. We're not going to be cooking on the stove. We're going to be cake decorating. And good friend of mine, Holly Coleman, lives in Dalton. We have a ladies group at our church, and one meeting we had we were to bring information about our hobbies or our interests, and to let the rest of the ladies in the group know more about us. And Holly brought a scrapbook, and she opened it up, and there were dozens of pictures of cakes that she had decorated for her family, for holidays, for whatever. And I said, this would be different. And I coaxed her to said, would you like to do a show here in Dalton at our kitchen? And it took a little while, but she finally said, okay. This is her first attempt at being in front of a camera. And so if we have some flubs, that no matter, because I'm so pleased to have her.
So good. Glad to be here.
Holly, her life's career was really in HR, and if you worked at the Norman Rockwell Museum, you would know Holly. Mm-hmm. And before that at Hillcrest Hospital. But now she has time to do what she really wants to do, and well, of course you needed to do your other interests.
Yes.
So we're going to get started, and her cake theme will be, of course, Valentine's Day, because it's almost February 14th. So Holly, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Nancy.
And
yeah, so this is my first time in front of the cameras, but I'm really happy and pleased to be here today. I have made many different cakes, mostly for children's cakes, a lot of fun cakes. Actually, years and years ago, though, wedding cakes, and any kind of cake that you could put a few roses on top and figure out how beautiful it comes out, just with those few roses. So I thought I would make or decorate a heart cake today that I've already made with some roses and some drop flowers that are fairly easy, I think. Roses can be a little, not tricky, well, yeah, tricky. But the whole thing with a rose, and I'll explain how you make one here. I've made some for the actual cake, but we'll just show you how one is made with a flower nail. And some people already familiar with these things know all about this, but this flower nail makes the roses and other beautiful frosting flowers too, but these are drop flowers over here, and you don't need a flower rose. I mean, you don't need a flower tip like this for that. So what you need to do first, though, is, and we have some pastry bags already filled with the frosting, the icing that I made this morning. So for for this particular rose, I'm going to just do white. But you first put a little dab of frosting on the nail. I have cut some pieces of about 2-inch wide wax paper here, because this is what you're going to build your rose on.
Is it easy to make that pastry of the frosting?
It's very easy. It's very delicious. You don't want to start tasting it because you might not stop, but it is just for one batch of it. It's half a cup of half a cup of butter, and then a half a cup of vegetable shortening, and then 4 cups. I think I'm telling you right, 4 cups of confectionery sugar, and you can put a little bit of vanilla in there. I use clear vanilla so that it stays nice and white and the colors don't change as you put the different colors in. And what else? I feel like I'm missing something. And then at the end, you mix that all together, and you end up putting a couple tablespoons of milk or water in it. And that's all that it is to it, and people tend to think it's delicious. So I can give you more exact directions on that at the end if we have an interest in that or time. So first thing you do, pastry bags you can get just about anywhere now. They are either parchment papers that you have to kind of roll and make yourself, which I used to do all the time, but I don't anymore. These are so simple to get them already made. Fill them. I use couplers on the end because what this does is you can take this off, take the tip off that I'm using right now, and put a different tip on. Each tip does something different. Flowers, borders, all sorts of things you can do with these tips. They're fabulous. So first we get a little mound of icing. So we have place to put the petals as we start them. You start with the larger end of this tip, almost in a 90-degree angle, just to make the first little bud on the top. And all you do is kind of touch on top of that mound and start squeezing and turning the nail at the same time. And if you can see that, there's a little bud shape there. And then you just should work down from there. So you kind of turn out a little bit more on the second round of petals, turn out one more time on the third row of petals. And sometimes if they're big enough, you have enough to make a fifth row. I don't think we will with this. And it depends on how big the mound is that you first put out there, but I only did a little one, so we will try to make some petals and see if they come out this time. There's one. There's two. Sometimes I use my hand to wipe it off. You have to make sure that there is no icing on the tip every time you go around, or they won't come out right. They'll do their own thing. And then three. Okay, so that doesn't look like a rose quite yet, but as you go around, and now you're going to do another row of, now you are at a 45-degree angle. Keep on turning with your fingers. It's like you can play with it a little bit because roses are beautiful. They're usually never one perfect. And so at the end, you do have a rose. Now this one looks a little bit like it needs some water, but we're going to keep that. So you just take it off, put it on a tray, and set it to dry. So these have dried. These been sitting here, or actually I made them last night. They've been overnight drying. So I'm going to change the tip from the round one. And that's the good thing about a coupler. You can do this. You can change tips instead of having to fill up another icing, a bag full of icing. Actually, it's really, really wonderful. And since I've been using them, I've never gone back to any other way. So you just put the flower tip on. This one happens to be a small one, but as you will see, all you need to do is put it 90 degrees onto a surface, which I use wax paper because it does seem to better than steel or anything that might make it have little lumps in it. So the wax paper really helps out well. Press in, make it like a star, but as you lift up, give it a turn, and you have yourself a little flower. Press, turn, and lift. Press, turn, and lift. As you can see, I made so many of them, and then at the end, I put little dots of, for the middle of the flower to make it look more like a flower. You can just use a very small round tip, change the tip again, and use a different color, which would be helpful to really show, it brings out the whole flower. So those are the easy. Other things I did, and I can show you that too, I made little rose buds. Instead of the full rose, you can just take the same tip you used for your rose, but this time you don't use the flower nail. Got to get that cleaned off a little bit here. Same thing, you keep your tip right down. This is more of a little bit of a 45-degree angle. Squeeze it and you'll see it will just come out into a little circle. Now before you lift off, you will now come back around. And you're going to make 2 petals on the side. 1 and 2. And that's a pretty large one. In fact, I'm going to put a little icing here so it stops moving around. Try that again. Around. And then you can just put 2 petals right on the side like that. And you have a little rosebud. Squeeze it, go around, and 2 petals on the side. And I think they're quite pretty. So the last one, I made a couple of rosettes. And this is what a lot of people are using now. They're taking more of the star tip. And again, you start off with a little star. You push it down, make a star, but keep on pressing and then go round and round and up. And as I said, if you keep on going with these, they really are quite easy. Press hard. Keep on pressing and push it all the way around, and they will come out pretty, as you can see there. So now we're going to decorate the cakes. So I have made a couple cakes, different cakes today, because I'm lucky enough to have a heart pan, and I did make a nice cake in that pan, nice and easy, came out beautiful. This, however, you don't need to do that if you have you don't even need a square. I did it with a square and a round. I know I've seen people have 2 rounds and they can cut it, the cakes enough so that they can piece it together and make it look like a heart. But this seemed easiest to me, so I baked a square. They're both 8-inch and a round. And I have already cut the top off. With all the cakes really that you make, you should try to take the crowns off if they need to be so that they're even with each other. I happen to have one of those levelers that you can just kind of slide through, which is fabulous because it's based on the same height for each cake. So in this case, they're all done. I did that, but I wanted to show you that, and I'm going to flip it over and get it ready for putting the sides right on here like this, and it's like a perfect fit to make a cake. And there you have it. You really don't even need to ice it in the middle unless you want to. You can, but at this point you could start. My only suggestion is this happens to look like a bit of a crumbly cake here, so the best thing to do for that is to take a little bit of frosting, very light cover frosting, before you actually do the ending of your frosting, and put it on lightly. Don't worry about if there's any crumbs in it or not, that's fine. Put it in the refrigerator for 30 minutes, and then you have yourself a nice cake ready to decorate, ready to really put the rest of the icing on. But we're going to put this over here for now and get rid of the crumbs. We don't like crumbs in our cakes unless you're having a crumb cake, right? So I'm going to put the heart cake right over here and get rid of this. Sometimes a pastry brush to get rid of the crumbs is a good thing to use, because especially if you're using, well, any kind of frosting, but this happens to be white, so you don't want to. I've made a lot of the white icing, so it's actually way too much right now, but you can use it later. This lasts up to 3-4 weeks if you really wanted to make cupcakes after, or whatever you wanted to do with it. But right now we're just going to, and if I had a little bit more time with this, I would have done the same thing that I just explained with that cake for this cake, because coming out of the refrigerator, they tend to be a little bit more sturdy, as you start to frost. But we're just going to go ahead and start frosting. So what I do first typically is take a big bunch of your icing and put it right in the middle. Don't be afraid to put a lot on, because you're going to be going back and forth and taking a lot off too. So it's start off with, you can really, and I have this on a turner, so that it's a lot easy to get everything spread out. So you can like push it right out to the sides. Don't worry about it. Actually, it's probably better if it goes over the sides a little bit, because of course you're then going to be kind of pressing it down and doing the side of the cake too. So, and most of us know how to do this. We've made cakes before. It's all in the, when you're going to make a cake like this and you want to smooth out the top and the sides, you do have to make sure the consistency is a little bit thinner than it would be for, say, your flowers. They need a little bit more thickness to it. Okay, so there you go. So after that, you can start placing it on the sides. Of course, you don't want to touch the cake, because you don't want to have any of the crumbs attached to your knife and get in. But if they do, you just, take it off, take it out. And the other thing about icing a cake when you're going to put some pretty flowers on it, I've learned, is that you want it to be nice and smooth, but you don't have to worry about it too much if you're going to be putting on. The flowers really make all the difference. So you just do the best you can with your smoothing of the icing. I've had a lot of experiences with cakes that came out beautiful, and then, traveling with them to get them to places is a whole nother thing. You just pray that they get there and all in one piece. Okay, we're getting there. It does take some time. This actually is a pretty big cake. I think this is a 12-inch heart pan. But you can see I'm not, I'm being generous with how much frosting I'm putting on here. So as I finish up here with getting the frosting on, now I will be taking some off. So if you weren't to do if you could stop right now and you could kind of make some swirly marks on top, and you could pretty it up with some flowers, and you could still be done, And sometimes people don't even do the sides anymore. They just do the tops. They leave the sides open and maybe do a border around. But we're going to just keep on going and smooth this out to the best that we can. Make sure I've covered all the areas. And I'm going to get a glass of water. I like to have the water on the side because if it needs it and you feel like it needs a little bit more liquid to smooth it out, then you have some water you can drop on top. So we'll get some water. So I have some water here, just a little cup of water. This is where you need to have your, and I do kind of put a little towel here so that I can be not putting it on my, you tend to need to get this off your knife when you're going to go smooth something out, because once you have you smooth the spot and then you don't take off what you have there, the next spot that you try to smooth won't be smooth. So you'll see what I mean. So I just start going, I do the top first. I do give it a little bit of a dab of water, not a lot. This seems to be pretty spreadable. I use a smaller brush. A lot of people like to use the angle brush, knife, cake knife. But as you can see, this is a little bent. This is like my knife that I've used for 25 years. So it's kind of goes with me at this point. So I'm going to use the straight knife and just start spinning around, just lifting off some icing, putting it back in the bowl, wiping it off, a little bit more water, spin it around again, just leaving a level, try to keep it level as you go. Some people use a bigger knife like this, but I tend to not be able to get it the way I want it unless I'm using a smaller knife. There we go. It's coming along. So even with taking some off, you'll see you've got quite a nice layer of icing there. You don't want to get it too thin. Okay, coming along here. Now we'll do the center. Coming good. Getting it all over our hands is not a problem. We can always get it off. So, so I'm going to leave it like it is on top right now. It could use a little bit more, but I'm going to go ahead and start the sides. And I try to start with one of the areas that when I'm done, maybe it's not really one that will face people when it's all done. So not that it can come out perfect, but sometimes right at the ends, it's hard to just get it perfect. So we'll see what happens. So on the sides, again, this can be a little tricky too. I go a little slower because you can go just as far as probably your hand can see, and then you've got to turn it around. And I already kind of see that if I go if I smooth it out anymore, the cake's going to come through. So I'm going to try to be really careful and not take a lot off the sides, but still make it nice and smooth. So this is coming down to the point. So you know you're going to be going around that way. Again, now as you see, that doesn't look too good right there. It's got, but I'm not going to touch it for fear that I might make it worse. And then you got to remember, we're going to put a border on this, so a top and a bottom border, and that will be covered right up. Let's see. It can get messy. Okay, that's looking pretty good. You can go back around, and if there are places to clean it up, the sides, you'll see that that there's frosting on the side here. Now, I didn't really have a real pretty cake board. Some of them are really pretty. You can put a doily down that fits it so that it kind of makes that border, the cake on the bottom, look really pretty. So I'm just going around right now, I'm not sure if you can see this or not, and just taking off as much as I can from the bottom without ruining what we just did here. And kind of cleaning it up a little bit before we go any further. Okay. So we have too much here. Kind of just lift it off gently. And the reason, even though we're going to put a border on this, you want the border to be as straight as possible to make it look a little bit more professional, which I'm not really good at making things look straight, so we'll see how this comes out. But it's always fun to see how they come out. You'll see when we put the flowers on, I'm not one either to follow a pattern, typically, unless I'm asked to, but you know, I'll just make a lot of flowers and then start putting them on wherever I think it will look good. Okay, so a little bit more on the top, and then I think we're ready to do the border. Or we might want to do the flowers first. So I'm just taking the top and just barely skimming any of the little wrinkles that you see on top. A little bit of well, usually warm water will help that out. But in this case, the frosting is a really good consistency because it's working pretty well. Okay. Make sure that top is good. Okay, so and that's the first layer of the frosting. Okay, so we have the cake ready for making it beautiful. So to do that, I'm going to put the flowers on first, and as you see, I've made some roses, so I'm going to start by putting I'm going to make, hopefully, some flowers that start here, some of the bigger ones, and then kind of work out around a little bit around down to the bottom of the heart. So I like to put a little bit of a helper on the top by making those that are on the top stand out a little bit more with some height. So we'll just put some on here and see what we got. We can use the knife here to lift up the flowers off of the paper. I'm going to only pick maybe 3 or 4 flowers. This one's a real pretty one. I'm going to lift it off with my knife and hopefully don't do that, but put it on so it looks really nice in the middle. If these dry a little harder than some of mine have dried by now, and they would have if they had a little bit more time, you wouldn't have to worry too much about. You could practically pick them up. It dries really nice. And there are other things you can use that dry really hard. But I'm going to take them off one by one, just gently put them on. and make a pretty center for this heart. Yep. I like that to be up a little higher. And remember, you can put as many on or as few, and sometimes the fewer, the prettier, I think. So at that point, I'm going to leave, we're going to put some smaller ones around them, but I'm going to put a couple more underneath the first ones and make it look like a nice bouquet. And I think what I'll do now is start using some of my little rose buds here to fill in, coming right underneath the roses. Using these as fillers just makes everything look so much prettier at the end, because we're going to also put some leaves on, and that will make that pink jump right out. So we'll just start working our way down the other side. Maybe a couple more. And then as we get there, we'll start using some of the smaller ones to round it out a little bit more. And we can get these to, these are going to be tricky. They're really not too hard. But you can, even if these didn't come out right, if you can always take your flour nail and just do some of these right on top of the cake. You don't have to have the little ones, the drop flowers, these anyway, completely dry. So I'm just doing it with a, they're going on fine, but gotta get that knife scooped right underneath and do a couple different colors. And I guess with we're done with the roses, so I'm going to put those over here and move this in. Let's see. It's fun to see them come alive a little bit when they're all together like this. Oops. Let's see. Okay, so I think that's kind of pretty as it stands. Remembering that we're still going to put a border around this. So what I think I'm going to do at this point to make it, see how it looks as is with some leaves, we'll just put some leaves on right now, and I'm just going to make a little practice leaf here. The leaf tip is kind of little flat like a leaf can be, but it has a ridge in it in the middle, in the middle of the tip, so that when you squeeze it out, and if you go back and forth, you'll get something that looks like a little leaf. there's all different sizes. I happen to use one of the larger ones, so maybe something on with the roses. I think a bigger leaf is nice. If you get down to the little, as you move down with the little drop flowers, you might want a smaller one, but today we're going to just use the larger one. And we're just going to fill in some of the blanks here, the blank spaces with some pretty leaves. You'll see you just put some pressure on it and then pull it out. It's a great finisher to use to make it really pretty. I like to get them right down there, squeeze it. Sometimes you just got to squeeze a bunch in the middle of your roses until it pops out between them, till the frosting pops out. Squeeze a little bit and then pull it. Whoops. Yeah, sometimes you get air in your pastry bags, and the little pop, and then you have to maybe do that one over. Like, I think I might even take that off. Make sure you get frosting off your tip sometimes. Clean it up, and we'll try that one again. That's a little better. This is the fun part. This is where you could spend all day just kind of making it prettier and prettier. So if I were home and I had a little bit more time, I would probably put a few more of the drop flowers maybe up around in the back. But I think I'm just going to work with what I have now, finish up the leaves, and go on to the borders. So this is a nice way to say Happy Valentine's Day to somebody, or just if you have a sweetheart, to say, I hope you have a wonderful day. And not too hard to do. Okay, so let's see. A little emptiness here. Try to keep it centered on both sides so that it doesn't look too lopsided. And I guess that's all. I'll finish it up there. You can also put a few down at the bottom, so maybe a couple roses to end it, finish it off. Or maybe one rose and a couple of these rosebuds, which I'm going to use my knife for. Okay, couple of leaves. And then we'll finish it off with the border. Today I'm going to be using a pink border. Okay. I'm using a star tip. I think it's 32 if you were looking for the number of it. It's not a very small one. Sometimes I do the border around and then I'll do a smaller tip star border on the inside. I really didn't leave enough room to do that today. So we'll just do a border on the top once and then go around the bottom. And with this, I'm one to more do it on the top and not the side, just because you can follow the line a little better and it would be a bit more straight as you go along. So I'm just going to do a shell border, which is squeeze up and down, squeeze, go up and down. And you do this all the way around. And again, this is a nice consistency, so it's coming out really nice, which is helpful. So once you start learning how to do the borders with shells, it's just super easy. You can just do cupcake. You can do anything with these. They have the nice big, thick tips that you can swirl around on a cupcake, and they make them come out beautiful. And don't worry about touching the flowers as you go around. The goal is to try to do them as evenly as possible. So the same amount that you press, the same each time will be better in the long run, make it prettier. So now we'll continue and we'll do the same thing we just did for the top border on the bottom borders. Again, sometimes if you have a bigger cake board than this, maybe a little larger cake tip for a bigger shell would look nice too. So this might be a pretty nice surprise for somebody that didn't think they were going to get a cake today. Like my grandson, maybe. almost. Does take quite a bit of frosting to put all these shells around, but we're almost perfect with how much frosting we have left here. If you were making this, you might want to write something on it. In this case, I just might write something very small. Just maybe say something like, love. And that's it. So I think we're done.
Thank you again, and I hope that you might come back and do some other ones. There are so many ideas, and if people want to write in and say, would she show me how to do a cake for so-and-so or what, we'd love to have you back.
Oh, absolutely. I would be pleased to do that.
Good.
Yeah.
You're probably tired, but I think you did a great job.
Thank you. No,
first time.
it was good. It is my first time, but I feel like it came out pretty, and
Yeah,
that's the main goal.
Right. So if there's anything you want to find out about Holly or that recipe, you can send a self-addressed envelope to Dalton Community Television at 151 Park Avenue, Dalton, Mass. 01226. And that's all for our kitchen and cake decorating today. Thank you.
Thank you.